welcome everyone to day 3 of the IEEE STEM Summit. My name is Donna Schultz and I'm the Senior STEM Education Outreach Manager here with IEEE, and we're excited to get the third day started. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next session. It's the IEEE President's Scholarship Panel, and I'd like to introduce our moderator, Bert Dicht. Bert is the president of Association Dynamics LLC. He is the former lead engineer at Northrop Grumman and Rockwell Space Transportation Systems Division, and also our past director of student and academic education programs at IEEE Educational Activities. So thank you so much, Bert, and I'll let you take the floor.
Thanks so much, Donna. It's a pleasure to be here. Welcome everybody to the third day of our IEEE STEM Summit. And I think you're really going to enjoy today's panel session where we discuss the President's Scholarship. So why don't we go to the next slide there? And just to let you know and introduce what the President's Scholarship is. It's funded by our IEEE Foundation. It is awarded annually to a student finalist at the Regeneron International Science and Engineering Fair, and it was formerly Intel. It's a $10,000 scholarship. It's awarded to a student for an outstanding project that demonstrates an understanding of electrical engineering, electronics engineering, computer science, or other IEEE fields of interest. So I think you're going to hear a lot more about some of these projects today and what all of our winners have accomplished since then. So why don't we go to the next slide, and I will introduce our President's Scholarship panel today. Our first panelist is Elena Glassman. She is Assistant Professor of Computer Science at the Harvard Paulson School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, and she was the 2004 IEEE President's Scholarship winner. Our second panelist is Alex DeCesco. Alex is a Falcon flight software engineer for SpaceX. He was the 2015 IEEE President's Scholarship winner. And our third panelist is Eamon Schulman. Eamon is a student at Berlin Institute of Technology, and he is the most recent winner of the scholarship in 2022. So Elena, Alex, Eamon, welcome. We really look forward to having a great discussion with you. Everybody, please feel free if you do have any questions, let us know and send those in. And I'll be asking the panelists some questions. We'll see where the discussion goes, but we also welcome your inputs and your questions. So why don't we just start off and get everyone introduced. And I think I'll start first with, I'll ask each of you the same question, and I'll start with Elena. So what got you interested in STEM, and how did you find out about the IEEE President's Scholarship?
So my dad is a longtime member of the IEEE, and so growing up, I think he didn't really exactly know what to do with me except for play with electronics. So that was bonding time, and I think I was really, it was kind of a game, just growing up, coming up with cool ideas and trying to sketch out how you would make it work. Because we were kind of limited in terms of what tools we had, it often ended up being software. Like, how would you process some audio signal to determine whether, it was the sound of a dog barking
It looks like we had a little interruption there. It looks like we...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, it was my dad. Unfortunately, I didn't know about the President's Scholarship until I won it at ISEF. But I did remember getting to meet the IEEE judges, and they were really responsive to my signal processing project and really encouraging. So I guess I was very grateful to be recognized after those great conversations.
It's always interesting to hear how people got interested. So you had a direct connection because of your dad. So, and that kind of led you into it. How about you, Alex? What got you interested in STEM and the President's Scholarship?
It's kind of similar. I've always been like really attracted to like the engineering and just science fields. I remember when I was like, I think I was like 5 or 6. We went to Disney World and there was a ride called Mission to Mars, and that was my favorite ride. That's what I remember. And then after that, we went to Cape Canaveral, and I remember that entire part, seeing all the rockets in Rocket Garden, and then trying the moon simulator. And then when I went into grade school, I remember playing around with model rockets with kids who were much much older than me. I like joined a club, and I had like a lot of fun there. And then I like pretty quickly realized that I was very interested in the STEM fields. Did science Olympiad and then robotics in high school, and then decided to give science fair a shot, where I ended up going to Intel ISEF and ended up somehow getting the IEEE President's Scholarship. So that was kind of my introduction. It's just always been a passion for me.
Eamon, how about you? How did you get interested in STEM and the President's Scholarship?
Yeah, I think for me it was mostly the same. Growing up, I was really interested in solving technical problems. So of course, in the beginning, very simple projects that I did, but eventually, with time, those projects got bigger and bigger. And my school was also a great motivation. I had a great physics teacher that really supported me, gave me the motivation to also continue on bigger, more challenging projects. And then I eventually visited a student science fair here in Germany, which then brought me to the Regeneron ISEF in the United States, and it was a really great experience meeting so many like-minded people there. And I also got in touch with the President Scholarship from IEEE, and I'm of course very grateful to receive this award, and it gave me a really a great motivation also to work further on the project.
Oh, very good. Thank you so much. So why don't we go to the next question? We're going to delve a little deeper into your project, and let's try to learn a little bit more about that. So Alex, I'm going to start with you. Why don't you describe your winning project?
Yeah, so I built and developed an omnidirectional robotic mobility system, and it was designed to help people with walking disabilities. Kind of the background behind it was I had a grandfather, and he was the one who like taught and like just was there for me as I grew up, and seeing him kind of degrade and not being able to walk around his apartment as much in Romania, kind of like I wanted to help him do that. And as kind of naive young person getting into the STEM fields, I wanted to build a robot. So that's what I knew how to do. So I ended up building this this platform that he can stand on and walk around, move around in his apartments. Sadly, he didn't end up getting to use it, but it was a really cool introduction, basically to the whole field, and the field of engineering and software engineering and working with electronics and hardware and whatnot. And yeah, that was how I ended up here.
A pretty ambitious project. How did you find out about this? What did you have to do to try to do the background and learn about all of this with only being a high school student?
Yeah, so I got a little bit of help. My dad is a mechanical engineer. So on the mechanical side, I was also in robotics, in my robotics program at school. We had a first FRC robotics team. So I learned a lot of my like core engineering skills there. Got to make mistakes on their dime instead of my own. And then when it came down to this was using all new parts and everything like that. So I wasn't really very familiar with it, versus like the first side. First side, it's a little bit more controlled in terms of what parts you use and whatnot. But in this, I just ended up using Google. It was kind of naivety, I think, a little bit, because I was like, oh, I could totally do this. Total optimism, blind optimism coming into it, and then just Googling problems as they come up and learning new ways. And now that I look back at some of the code that I wrote, I definitely could have done a much better job. But I think as a young person getting into it, is pretty happy with what I got.
Fabulous. Eamon, how about you? How did you, please, again, describe your winning project and how you got interested in that one?
Yeah. So basically, as we all know, weather data is one of the most important data in our daily life. So when I just look out the window, I see a lot of rain and snow. So it's really important to take a look at it and to acquire this data. Every day, several thousand weather balloons are launched from weather services from all over the world. But unfortunately, current designs burst after just a few hours and thus continuously pollute our environment with their remains. And in my project, I've developed and evaluated new approaches to these upper air soundings, and myself developed devices equipped with a solar power supply and a special foil balloon. And thus they can be used on long-term soundings in the stratosphere. So in comparison to a measurement time of a couple of hours with current devices, in my test flights, my balloons could stay up in the stratosphere for weeks or even months, and this, of course, require a lot more data per balloon. And when the balloon eventually bursts, there's a lot more data for this balloon acquired, and much less balloons need to be launched. And in my test flights, which was really great to see, my balloons were able to circumnavigate the world several times, which was really interesting to see the flight path that the balloon took when he flew around the world.
Very good. Now, I'll do the same follow-up question. How did you do your research? How did you learn about all these aspects in order to complete your project?
Yeah, it was basically learning by doing. So, of course, I was coming into this project quite blindly. I didn't really know what to do, but I got step for step. I got into a problem, and then I also used a lot of Google, I guess, to figure it out and learn the skills required. But it was also a lot of trial and error, actually. So my first balloons that I developed, they didn't really work that great, but over time it got better and better. And I would totally agree to Alex. When I take a look at my software just from a year ago, it looks totally messed up. And I think when I take a look at my current software in a year, I think it looks messed up then. So it's really learning by doing, and I think that's also what many young people in the STEM field feel, that it's really an open field and they learn as they go. And you do a lot of mistakes, but then after a year or so, you can take a look back at those mistakes, and you can learn from them, and it's a really rewarding experience.
Fabulous. It's great that the both of you used Google and learned by doing. Elena, how about you? Why don't you describe your project and how you got involved in that one?
Sure. Yeah. It's funny. I'm just nodding my head enthusiastically as I recognize. I mean, so I got involved in, I was doing research projects, and then found out through marching band, a friend of mine was like, you should enter the science fair. That's, every year I was kind of working further and further on the same kind of problem of kind of extracting the most actionable information from just one-dimensional signals, audio. So I'd been originally working on kind of audio files, just learning about signal processing, because I wanted to have a pet robot. There's a robot theme here. I wanted a pet robot that could tell that I was saying its name and that I was interacting with it and do associative learning and like all this kind of stuff. But in order to do any of that, you needed to process audio. Like that was the simplest thing to kind of like have some intelligence around responding to the environment. And so every year I would look back at the previous project and be like, that was a dumb idea. Like, let me, and so basically I like went decade by decade, right? Reinventing signal processing, or not reinventing it, just trying the next kind of generation of methods. And so my IEEE President Scholarship project was a wavelets were kind of, I don't want to say all the rage then. I'm sure I was kind of behind the times, but like that was, you know, the notion of a wavelet, this multi-dimensional, multi-scale analysis. I thought, well, why, you know, I only have like 16 wavelets to choose from. And I understand they have these mathematical properties that make them kind of like lossless encoders of what's the information at multiple frequencies, but why not, you know, maybe I can give up a little bit of the losslessness to have a wavelet that's more like a matched filter on exactly what I'm trying to identify. And so I made my own wavelet. I mean, technically it's kind of an approximate wavelet because it doesn't have all the mathematical properties of a true wavelet, but and that allowed me to extract information out of, in this case, EEG's recordings from the left and right side of the motor cortex. So the idea and the hope, you know, similar to Alex, you know, my hope was that people who had motor dysfunction could make use of this algorithm and better extracting whether they were trying to move their left or right hand in order to, you know, control, say, a computer device if their spinal cord has been injured or something like that. And I never did get to use it in the field, but I was able to leverage EEG recordings that others and eventually I made, you know, that were, you know, like available as data sets to train and test the accuracy. So you know, the wavelet helped me gain much better accuracy in analyzing the content of the EEG in order to reflect that in controlling a computer.
Fabulous. It's just amazing to hear you describe these projects and think that you're doing these as students, and it's representative of all the projects that are submitted to the President's Scholarships. So thank you so much, and congratulations. As we go into the next question, it's about, well, I think you basically touched on some of these things before about what inspired you to develop the project. So I think I'm going to move on to the next question if we can, and just talk a little bit about maybe what's happened since. I know, Eamon, I'll start with you. Yours is the most recent, but in effect, what do you think are the long-term implications or impact of the project that you worked on?
Yeah, so I think I'm actually in the process of exactly figuring that out. So in the last time, I really worked a lot on the project, especially improving reliability. And my bigger hope is that maybe one day this like student project from my basement can be turned into real product and just make a real difference in the bigger scheme of things. So I'm working a lot on this, and yeah, also I was talking to a lot of different people from all over Europe, and I shared my designs with them, and they also built my devices after my plans, and it was really cool to see that people could actually also use this technology, and maybe we can cooperate and improve this design together. And it was really great to see that so many people were interested in it.
Fabulous. Elena, same question to you. Anything further come out of your project? Any long-term impacts from it?
Yeah, actually. So I think, you know, in part from the recognition that the project, well, almost solely because of the recognition that things like the IEEE President's Scholarship, I basically, you know, it got into the local newspaper, and there was a professor who ran his own EEG lab at a regional university. Sorry, I shouldn't say regional. I mean, a well-renowned, but just happened to be within, you know, an hour's drive. And he said, "Hey, I can't pay you, but do you want to hang out in the lab for a summer before you go to college?" And I said, you know, of course, sure. I'll learn how the actual EEG device works rather than working with other people's recordings. And because I got to hang out in that lab, there was a postdoc there who basically the professor was like, "Postdoc, why don't you help Elena publish this? Like it's worth trying to publish it." And the poor postdoc, I still remember, he looked at my writing, and no one had taught me how to write. I mean, I mean, academic writing is its own beast, right? And I teach people how to write now, but at the time, he's like, Elena, your ideas are amazing. Your writing is like awful. But he worked with me, and so because of their help, I submitted a single author journal paper about the project that the President's Scholarship had awarded to the IEEE transactions on, I think, biomedical signal processing. I may be misremembering the exact journal title. But yeah, so that was my first publication, and it has been one of my most cited, I mean, because it's one of my most cited papers. And so it's so wonderful to see, since 2004, so many people finding it worth referencing this paper and reading what I did to inform what they do today. I mean, I'm sure they're doing, much better things, but, that's how science works.
Fabulous. Alex, how about you? Long-term impacts of your project?
I'd say one of the biggest long-term impacts, like Lena said, is on my own future. I think directly because of this project, I was able to get some really, really cool jobs. I've worked at Tesla and Amazon Robotics, and now I work at SpaceX. All of those, in college, I kind of used it as a development platform for expanding my own knowledge. So I got into control theory and controls, and then further into object detection, object recognition, avoidance, using 3D cameras. And then now I have this almost like a version 3.0 of the design that I've built, and I use for testing a lot of my own software components that I built in open source. And then from there, I used it to present to get my job currently at SpaceX. So the project itself is very near and dear to my heart because it just keeps coming back, and I keep using it as a development platform and using it to build new and greater things.
Fabulous. Eamon, how about you?
Yeah, after the award, I went, of course, to university. So I went to Berlin Institute of Technology, and I started studying electrical engineering. And I, of course, hope to use all of this knowledge that I've acquired over the project and use it for my studies. But it's also great to see the approach from university of teaching stuff is a bit different if you just Google a question, so you get a much more organized overview of everything. It's really cool, and that those fragments of knowledge that you gained with your project are now coming together in a bigger picture in university. And yeah, that was really motivation for me after the project.
Great. I know the next couple of questions are, in a way, we've touched on those about how the scholarship impacted you and what path you took. So I just want to try to follow up with that, that you were part of the IEEE President's Scholarship. So certainly things that are related to our fields of interest. But I'll start with you, Elaine. Did this participation solidify your career path? Did you say, yes, I want to do electrical or computer or something within IEEE's fields? Is, just trying to get an idea of how that influenced your career path.
Sure. Well, it was incredibly meaningful to be recognized by the professional organization that, my dad had been is still a part of. And, kind of like I grew up thinking about, thinking of myself as an aspiring electrical engineer, in part because I was doing electrical engineering, and the award was kind of validating, like, yes, like that is what you're doing. You're not fooling yourself. I mean, external validation is wonderful. It's not necessarily why you get up in the morning to do your project, but it is nice to kind of confirm that you're on the track towards what you want to do. And so it's funny, I went to MIT thanks to the recognition of this scholarship and others. And I know that I would not have been able to go had I not gotten that. And So while I was at MIT, I enrolled in ECS, which is a combined electrical engineering and computer science degree. Most schools, they are separate departments, but here they were together. And so, I took the initial buffet of classes, and and then I was like, oh, I am definitely an electrical engineer. I'm not a computer scientist. These are very, so I ended up taking all these hardcore EE classes, and then kind of the few, the proud, because most people were taking software engineering. And so, I guess I now am in computer science department doing human computer interaction, and all I do is software development. So like, haha, but, my training, I still tell people today, I'm an electrical engineer who's in a CS department. So, I don't know, it was nice to be recognized by that IEEE at that kind of formative stage when I was thinking about what I would major in college.
Great. Alex, you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but you want to just give us a little bit more detail about how this might have solidified your career path?
Yeah, very similar to Elena. I just in a slightly different field and in a slightly different way. I wanted to become a mechanical engineer. I really enjoyed the mechanical side of things and building things and 3D printing it. So I remember in high school I was getting into 3D printing, and that was like the coolest thing, the new kid in the block kind of thing. I still have a 3D printer right here off to my left that I play around with. I actually just printed something overnight. So that was like my real passion. That's what I really enjoyed. I really liked the physical, like working with hardware. But what I really wanted to do was work with robots. I thought that robotics was going to be the big new thing. I really appreciated taking like dumb mechanical systems that move in one or two different ways, but very reliably, and then giving them a sort of brain to like work off of and perceive the surrounding world. So I wanted to do mechanical engineering, but really I wanted to do robotics, like work with robotics. And the school I ended up going to, Worcester Polytechnic Institute, WPI, in Massachusetts. They actually had a robotics engineering program, and that was actually the biggest reason why I chose them over other schools, because I could get a robotics engineering degree. And then one thing led to another. I realized that I was not very good at software, so I started working. All my personal projects were all software projects, and then obviously those went on my resume. And when I applied to internships, everyone was like, "Oh, you're a software engineer. You do all these software projects." And now I'm a software engineer for SpaceX. So I kind of like stumbled into this career path a little bit. It's all kind of still in the robotics field and robotics realm. I was still doing software back in high school, so it is still like somewhat relevant. But yeah, it was kind of just like by mistake. I ended up becoming a software engineer, and now I contribute code around the world. I also work SpaceX and rate software, and also design things on my free time whenever I can.
Fabulous. And full disclosure to all my EE friends, I'm a mechanical engineer. So, so Eamon, you're in an EE program now as a student, so you're just starting out. But did the participation in the President's Scholarship solidify your path, and which major you decided to choose?
Yeah. So during the project, I got a glimpse of so many fields of engineering, because there was a bit of software stuff. There was a lot of like electronic stuff, PCB design, but also some high frequency stuff. And there were so many fields. So in the end, I decided on electrical engineering. But I think that doing those projects that you do in your free time, they really show on which fields you are passionate about. So I would recommend everyone starting out and searching for a field to go in university just to do some projects in this field first, and then see what really interests you, what you're passionate about, and then choose this field. And yeah, maybe it's the same deal with Alex, that when I'm finished with university, starting my career that then I will notice that I'm actually more interested in other things. But I will see. I think, yeah, it's a start now, and I will see where the journey goes after that.
Great. You've got plenty of time to figure out your path. So we look forward to hearing more about that. Let me go into a question. You've kind of all touched on this. I want to advance the slide one more time. I think one more slide, if we could. Yeah, about what you're currently doing. Alex, I'm going to start with you. And I know you're working at SpaceX. You talked a little bit about the path, some of the different projects. But can you tell us a little bit more about what you do at SpaceX? And is this what you thought you might be doing when you started out this path?
Yeah, I can quickly allude a little bit and foreshadow. It was not what I thought I was going to be doing when I first started. But I graduated from WPI with a bachelor's, and then I decided it was worth overdoing, so I got a master's as well in robotics engineering. And that led me to SpaceX, where I am a Falcon flight software engineer. So the Falcon program, you guys have probably seen the Falcon 9 landing and whatnot in videos. I am directly responsible. I'm a responsible engineer, as we call it internally, for the Falcon software. So part of my job requires me to develop the rocket code. Another part is the operations side, so actually operating the rocket, sitting in mission control, making sure that the mission's ready to go, testing it right beforehand in simulation. We run thousands and thousands of different simulations to make sure that it will run first time, and then watching it launch and seeing my baby that I worked on for the last couple of months go up into space and hopefully come back and land. I think one of the coolest parts that I've gotten to do so far was DART, the double asteroid redirection test that NASA just launched, and we just impacted into an asteroid and ended up moving it by a lot more than we were expecting. I was directly responsible for that mission. I was the flight software responsible engineer on the rocket side, on the Falcon side. So seeing it launch for the first time, I remember it was a lot of work, lots of late nights, but seeing it launch back then in November and then seeing it impact now in September, October, I was really, really proud of that moment.
Fabulous. Well, I'm going to the launch this afternoon, so I'll be thinking about you. Okay. Eamon, I know you're a student right now, but want to tell us a little bit about what your focus is while you're in school? And I know you've got a lot of different paths you can choose from. Do you have anything that you're thinking about that you want to do when you get your degree?
So actually, it's a difficult question. Yeah, I don't really know, because so for now I can see that the scope of the electrical engineering field is huge, but I only know a really, really small part. And hopefully when I'm finished with university, I'll know a lot more about the field, and then I can see in which part of the field I really want to go in and to develop a career in. But for now, I'm more going like blindfolded in this whole adventure, and then seeing what will turn out in the end. So that's basically my plan for now.
Yep, it's an exciting time. So certainly we wish you success on whatever path you decide to choose, and we know you're going to do well. Elena, you became a college professor. Is that something that you thought about when you were starting out? And tell us a little bit about what you do there at Harvard.
Sure. I grew up, I guess, kind of in the town of Princeton, New Jersey. And so there was a lot of outreach programs at Princeton, but particularly actually the astronomy department. They would have these monthly lectures for the public by various professors who were in town or local. And then you would, so you'd hear them talk about the latest things happening with Jupiter. And then you'd go look at Jupiter through this teeny little telescope that they had on the top, that was no longer useful at all for research, but was just fine for looking at Jupiter. And so, you know, I kind of realized that, you know, whatever it is, whatever job they had, which was called professor, was a pretty sweet job. And so I kind of like early on wanted to do that. And so I knew that to become a professor, you need to research, and I enjoyed doing these projects. And ISEF was a, you know, a formalization of what I had been doing kind of on my own. So like the annual ritual of submitting my paperwork and getting my board together and kind of, you know, really, you know, that forcing function to externalize and to get everything ready really kind of gave structure to my research. And then I knew that obviously I'd eventually need to do a PhD. It was just a question of like, what would my PhD be about? And so I'm now a professor of human-computer interaction, which was a field that I didn't even know existed until halfway through my PhD. I was in robotics because I thought robotics is pretty cool. If I could make a robot move, you know, more quickly and agilely, like, yeah, you know, but I didn't really enjoy it. Like, it was like one of those things where you're just like, I'm a roboticist, and everyone's like, that's awesome. And you're like, I don't enjoy it. So I then ended up, I thought, gosh, you know, this brain computer, this EEG based signal analysis project that I had done for science fair that got all this recognition that I enjoyed so much. It was all about interacting with the computer, you know, like new ways in which we can interact with them. Turns out that's a field in itself, and that's what I want to do. So it was kind of full circle coming back to. So I finished my PhD in human-computer interaction, and now at Harvard, I run a research group on human-computer interaction. So I help mentor undergraduates and PhD students to, you know, help us collectively clarify what the right designs for new interfaces for communicating our intent to computers are. And I also teach classes trying to kind of give people a sense of the field at an undergraduate level or a graduate level. So, and I do things like this.
Fabulous.
It's part of the job is to pay it back.
Absolutely. I'm gonna add a question that's not on our list now, because it's something that I've done when I've talked to many students. You've all had success up to now in your careers, but we sometimes face obstacles and challenges. Sometimes things don't work out. And I just want to see if you have had an experience like that maybe can benefit our audience or students thinking about following these paths. So Eamon, I'll start with you. Any challenges that you've overcome? Anything that said, hey, now that I did that, I know I can do and tackle almost anything. So just wanted to see if you have anything you might like to share.
Yeah, so in my project, there was a lot going wrong all the time. So there were a lot of hurdles, and I guess as a young person, really deeply committed to this project, it really those hurdles and those mistakes that you make that you eventually have to overcome, but they personally really affect you because you're so committed on this project. So I can only recommend everyone to just maybe step back a bit and take a look at the bigger picture. So do not focus so much on the problem that you have right now, but focus on what you have achieved so far, and maybe finding a new approach to tackle those problems. And some problems, they can only be overcome with a lot of work after a time. And I think that you shouldn't get patient. So you shouldn't think that everything that you should overcome all hurdles and that you get really fast. Sometimes you just need to take your time and work a bit on it, and then it will eventually work. That was a bit of experience for me. that sometimes I wanted to overcome hurdles very fast, but that's of course not how it works sometimes, and so you just have to take your time, and then it will probably work out in the end.
That is such a very inspiring message, and I know we spend a lot of time and talking to students about what the engineering design process is, and the fact that failure is an inherent part of that you learn. You don't let that hold you back. You figure out, as you said, you step back, take another look at things, whether it's in your profession or a personal life. That's a really important aspect. So thanks for sharing that. Elena, I'll ask you the same question.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that message. You know, I can't hear that message enough, because, you know, the impatience of, you know, sometimes you're like, I want to make this thing, right? And yet, you know, I've been working on this particular project. There's this rendering of large piles of documents like text that I've, you know, kind of had in my mind that it should exist. And this is approximately how it would work. And I've been trying to externalize it, like both to write about, you know, what kind of design choices and why, you know, and work with other people to bring together the natural language processing and the visualization techniques to make it happen. And it is, you know, it's taking years, and, you know, this, and it's one of those things where, I think for me, you know, it's always possible that something you want to create is like not as awesome as you think it is in your mind. You know what I mean? Like that, you know, that, you know, if you're not trying things that are going to fail, right? So I think having kind of a balanced portfolio of, well, both like across life and work, as well as, you know, within your work, right? You know, like this is a project that I move forward every day a little bit, but I also have other projects. And sometimes those projects, they hit that hit of speed because something fell together. And then, you know, and then I come back to this project that's kind of slowly coming along, and just normalizing that notion that, you know, each project has its own speed. And sometimes that speed is really fast, and sometimes that speed is, you know, like watching paint dry. And you just have to, like, you know, let other things come to fruition during their period of speed, while this one is kind of maturing at its own sweet, sweet, slow pace.
I love that simplicity of that concept of about a balanced portfolio. That's a great approach. So Alex, I'll follow up with you, and any obstacles, any guidance you can have for how to overcome those challenges.
Yeah, and you will absolutely have them if you go into in any STEM field. I think for me personally, I am a blind optimist. I will look at everything and think that, oh, I can totally do that, and then kind of jump into it and realize I did not have the skills, or really I don't know. It's always gotten me where I am. I'm able to do things that other people thought would be impossible, as my age, or for what I'm doing. But it also gets me in trouble sometimes, especially when it comes to time estimation and getting things predicted correctly. And so I think, like, on kind of that level, it's just blindly trying things, and, you know, just for the fun of it, can get you in a lot of places. And then also remembering that engineering, the field that we all do, that's the whole point, is solving problems. So if you run into a problem, that's what you've been trained for your entire life as an engineer, is to solve it. And as far as we've come, most of the problems, if not all of the problems that humanity has hit, has been solved in some way, shape, or form. So the problem that you'll hit in the future, you'll be able to solve it one way or another if you just keep working at it and kind of doing it. So that's kind of how I've lived my entire life, of just blindly thinking that I'm going to be able to solve any problem that I run across, and it kind of has worked out so far, but we'll see in the future.
Great. Thank you all for that. That's all very inspirational, and appreciate your candor in sharing those your own experiences as well. So I know we're approaching time. I want to get to our final question so we can allow time for see if there are any questions from the audience, and then to close out the session. So the final question is, all encompassing in a sense. We discussed a lot of different things today, but what advice do you have for young students who are thinking about pursuing an engineering or STEM career? And Elena, I'll start with you since we asked the first question of you. We'll end asking the last question with you as well.
So I guess the advice that I would have about pursuing engineering is actually it's related to, but additional concepts of this kind of notion of a balanced portfolio, which is to have a certain kind of lightness of touch and playfulness. And I think it connects a little bit with prior answers in that I try to push my current students to come up with 5 different ways, 5 different designs for any kind of major choice that we're making. And I really struggled to come up with 5 designs when my PhD advisor would ask me to do that. I would come up with 3, and then the other 2, would just be like a small modification of one of those 3. I'm like, it's technically 5. But I push my own students to do that because I know how important it is to kind of have this light touch and oh, what if this existed? What if that existed? And not get, kind of too narrow-minded. And I mean, obviously it's great to be kind of consistent in your vision of what you want, but maybe flexible and playful about exactly how you get there. So that would be my advice.
Oh, fabulous. Thank you so much. Alex, same question to you.
Yeah, this is a tough one. There's a lot of advice that I've learned out in the past, but I think the one that has been the most has helped me be the most successful is to be honest with yourself. And when I say to be honest with yourself, I mean to truly, truly dig down deep and be super duper introspective about what you're doing. If you just didn't do as well as you wanted to on a test, you can tell your parents or your teachers that you tried and studied as hard as you want. But deep down inside, if you are lying to yourself, you're not going to get anywhere. So it doesn't really matter what you tell your parents, which is probably not what my mom and dad want me to hear or say. But you really need to sit down whenever you have a sort of failure or made a mistake or something. Think and is there another path I could have taken? Because that's how you learn, and that's how you become a better engineer. That's how you become a better person in life. So yeah, that's probably one of my best tips I can give that I've learned so far.
Thank you. Thanks. That's great. Thanks so much. Eamon, you're the most connected to this next generation coming up. What's your perspective, and what kind of advice do you have?
Well, yeah, it's a really difficult question. But for me personally, especially in high school and stuff, we had so many different subjects, and there were fields that I was really interested in and fields I wasn't interested in and I wasn't really good at. And I think that this shouldn't discourage you, and you should always think about the things that you can do best and that you're really passionate about, and you should try and focus on these things, because you will always be better at doing things that you are passionate about yourself. And I think that would be my advice. But of course, I'm still in the process of figuring it out. So maybe when I think about it in 10 years, I will have some more answers. But for now, I will see.
Very good. Thank you all so much. I don't know if we had any questions that were submitted, but I know we're running out of time. So on behalf of everybody at IEEE, I really want to thank you for taking part in the panel session today. We learned a lot. First, congratulations for the amazing work you did to win the President's Scholarship. And for Elena and Alex, all the amazing things you're doing today in the profession. And Eamon, we're looking forward to your contributions as you move forward as well. So I'd also like to thank the IEEE Foundation for its sponsorship of the President's Scholarship and all the work that goes into it. And my two former IEEE colleagues, Donna Schultz and especially Lynn Mulvey, who manages the President's Scholarship. It's such an important program that highlights the incredible things students today are doing and how they are working to change the world. So with that, I want to turn this back over to Donna. And again, thank you all for joining us at the STEM Summit and this great panel session. Donna, I'll turn it back over to you.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Bert, and everyone. What a great session. I learned so much. You've inspired me. We greatly appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of let's see here, of a housekeeping. Hold on one moment. Let me rearrange a few things before we go on. Thank you again, everyone. We really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having us.
Well, thank you again, everyone. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Bert and panel. It was a great session. I wanted to just note a few items before we close out this session. As Bert mentioned, this is a program funded. The award that the recipients received is funded by the IEEE Foundation, and so we wanted to just bring that to your attention. You can see here that this is in partnership. It's a Tri-Engineering Fund in partnership with IEEE Foundation, and there's an opportunity for you all to check out that website under the Give Now in the yellow. You can see that there. And lastly, I wanted to just bring, sorry, going in the wrong direction. I wanted to let you know that there's upcoming events today. This is the third day of our summit, and this was the first session. And we have a few more coming up. We have Engineering Mindset and Agency with Christine Cunningham coming up shortly at 10 o'clock Eastern Time. And then later in the day, we have a session called Capturing the Diverse Interests of Students Through the Diverse World of Computer Science at 4. And then we'll be closing out today's summit with a live chat, and we'll be using spatial chat. So I hope you'll get an opportunity to come and network with everyone and meet everyone else in this community. So with that, we'd like to close out the event. Thank you so very much, everyone. We greatly appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you at the next session.